Recording in progress.
Good afternoon, honorable members. Let's observe a moment for silent prayer or meditation. Thank you. Please be seated. The secretary will read the order.
Debate on vote number 31, Employment and Labour Appropriation Bill.
To introduce the budget, I recognize the Honourable the Minister of Employment and Labour.
Honorable Chairperson and honorable members, Deputy Ministers, Acting Director General, Deputy Directors General of our department, Chairpersons and CEOs of our entities, our national and international social partners, my guests watching from the viewing venue, fellow South Africans. We table this budget vote of the Department of Employment and Labour at a moment of both difficulty and determination for our country. The latest Statistics South Africa report reminds us of a reality that South Africa's economic recovery is not translating into jobs. While there are signs of stabilization in the economy, including improvements in the electricity supply, moderating inflation, renewed infrastructure investment, and growing investor confidence, millions of South Africans still wake up every morning without work, without income, and without certainty about tomorrow. The survey highlights the continued fragility of South Africa's labor market recovery after declining from 33.2% in the third quarter of 2025 to 31.4% in the fourth quarter. The official unemployment rate rose again by 1.3 percentage points to 32.7% in the first quarter of 2026, leaving more than 8 million South Africans unemployed. The crisis confronting young people between the ages of 15 and 34 is that unemployment remains critically high at nearly 46%, underscoring the urgent need for accelerated economic growth, targeted labor market interventions, and large-scale youth employment opportunities. In 1976, the youth of South Africa rose against exclusion and the denial of opportunity. As we honor their sacrifice, we have declared 2026 as the year of putting young South Africans to work in honor of the 1976 youth and commemoration of the Youth Uprising Golden Jubilee. This is a national commitment to place youth on employment, skills, workplace experience, and economic participation at the center of government, business, and society. To deepen these interventions, 350 million has been committed to the government and business partnership, working with the presidency and the National Pathway Management Network to place 130,000 young people into learning opportunities, work exposure programs, and employment interventions. In addition, 95 million rand has been committed to the IDC to support youth employment innovation project aimed at placing 7,000 young people into productive economic activity. Through the lab, we are repositioning and repurposing our interventions to respond more effectively to South Africa's deepening unemployment crisis and to connect unemployed South Africans to real economic opportunities. The review of the lab strategy is now centered on 3 focus pillars aimed at improving labor market absorption, strengthening workplace experience, and supporting enterprise-led job creation. The first pillar focuses on demand-led skills development aligned to needs of the labor market. Working in partnership with business, public entities, and training institutions, we are ensuring that training programs are directed towards scarce and critical skills that are required by the economy and that improve the prospects of employment absorption. The second pillar prioritizes the placement of graduates, TVET students, and learners from higher education and training institutions into internships and work integrated learning opportunities so that they can complete their qualifications and gain the workplace exposure necessary to enter the labor market. This will include the placement of 20,000 TVET students on work integrated learning, chartered financial analysts, chartered accountants, professional technicians and engineers, law students and health inspectors. In addition, we will train 10,000 youth on digital skills and 10,000 for driver's license. Through partnerships with employers and training institutions, we are strengthening pathways from learning into work. The third pillar focuses on intervention support for micro, small, and medium enterprises through blended finance mechanisms aimed at stimulating economic activity, supporting business growth, and expanding job creation. Through these targeted interventions, the lab is being reshaped into a more responsive instrument for employment creation, economic inclusion, and sustainable livelihoods. Through targeted labor market interventions, government will recruit 200,000 unemployed people in the current financial year alone, contributing to a total of 605,000 beneficiaries over the MTF. Importantly, 70% of all opportunities will be directed towards the youth, reflecting a deliberate commitment to address the plight of unemployed young people. The Department of Employment and Labor has been allocated 4.5 billion rand, representing 10.2% increase from the previous year. Of this amount, DEL will be contributing more than 100 million to critical ICT infrastructure. 36.6 billion rand over the MTF has been set aside for the labor activation program. We call on all the employers to partner with us and open opportunities to place these young South Africans to either complete their studies or first-time work experience through internships. For the 26-27 financial year, the Department of Employment and Labor has been allocated 4.5 billion, as I've said. As part of building the enforcement capacity, we launched the phased implementation of Project 20,000 Inspector Interns, a historic expansion of Labor Inspectorate aimed at strengthening the frontline presence of DEL across the country. The first phase of the 10,000 Inspector Interns commenced during 25-26 financial year. And by the end of April 2026, approximately 3,800 young interns had already entered training and deployment processes. A further 3,500 will start end of May, while 2,700 start by end of June. These young recruits are the new boots on the ground in the fight against labor exploitation, non-compliance, and workplace injustices. Project 20,000 gained further momentum. You rather listen so that you report to your CIC. Project 20,000 gained further momentum following the announcement of the appointment of the 10,000 permanent labor inspectors by President Cyril Ramaphosa in the 2026 SONA. Listen, the department will start with the recruitment of these permanent inspectors. Instead of recruiting the remaining 10,000 interns, we have set aside 5 billion rand for the MTF period for this program. We plan to modernize labor inspection systems through hybrid inspections that leverage digitization and smart technology to improve and strengthen compliance monitoring across workplaces. Public employment services is a frontline instrument in the fight against unemployment, where millions of work seekers face exclusion, not only because of the shortage of jobs, but because of distance, cost, information barriers, and fragmented systems. Access itself becomes a matter of justice. Again, the honorable member of the AFF must listen here. That is why we are strengthening employment services. South Africa is a system that is expanding online and labor center-based services and harmonizing systems with National Pathway Management Network to ensure that unemployed South Africans are connected to jobs, are connected to training, counseling, and support with greater speed, reach, and fairness. Employers are now able to access the system directly and match with unemployed work seekers, whether they require chefs, whether they require waiters, drivers, plumbers, artisans, etc. ESSA can be accessed via www.labour.gov.za and click on ESSA under Online Services tab. Through ESSA, the department has built the largest government work seekers database in the country. As part of advancing more coherent and impactful public employment program, I have approved the progression of the Public Employment Program's review report to the DG clusters and cabinet processes. The report is informed by the need to strengthen coordination, planning, and implementation of approximately 106 public employment programs introduced since 1994. Upon completion of the approval processes, the report will be released for public comment as part of advancing a more coherent and impactful public employment programs framework. 350 million has been set aside for government and business partnership, working with the presidency to the National Pathways Management Network to place 130,000 young people into learning opportunities, work exposure, programs, and employment interventions. In addition, 95 million rand has been committed to the IDC for Youth Employment Innovation Project aimed at placing 7,000 young people into productive economy. Through targeted labor market interventions, government will recruit 200,000. I'm repeating that. It is part of the program that we are doing. One of the interventions supported through this program has been Teacher Assistant Program. During the 2025-26 financial year, the Teacher Assistant Program had recruited 158,000 young South Africans, and we had budgeted or funded this program with 4 billion rand. Through the network processes, the Labour Laws Amendment Bill proposes critical reforms of the Labour Relations Act, Basic Conditions of Employment Act, National Minimum Wage Act, and Employment Equity Act. These changes are aimed at strengthening worker protection, improving dispute resolutions, reducing unnecessary compliance burdens for small businesses, and aligning legislation and with the Constitutional Court and Labour Court judgments. The progress is already measurable. The Labour Law Amendment Bill was approved by Cabinet, and we are expecting that this process be undertaken through the process of submitting to Parliament, as we have received submissions about 216, which we are busy processing. Since the introduction of the national minimum wage, it has benefited estimated 6 million workers. Following the promulgation of the Employment Equity Act and introduction of sectoral numerical targets on 1 January 2025, more than 14,000 designated employers submitted employment equity reports, while over 11,000 non-designated employers applied for compliance certificate. In 2025-26 financial year, the department is targeting 3,324 employment equity inspections. It was targeting those, including Director General's reviews, reassessments, and monitoring interventions. A total of only 9% of the 1,900 companies that were inspected by our department only complied, only 9%, which is 181. Honorable Chairperson, for 26-27, the Department of the Unemployment Insurance Fund has been budgeted for 41 billion rand. And during 25-26 financial year, UIF through TERS had supported 30 companies with approximately 295 million, saving more than 9,300 jobs. We are not satisfied with this performance. We shall make sure that we put more systems in place to spend the 2.4 billion that we have budgeted for TERS this financial year. LAP program is allocated, again, a budget of 36.6 billion over the MTF. Honorable members, the CF is 28 billion rand, and 300 million is spent on bursary program that currently supports 4,000 students in scarce skills. The SEE is the only state manufacturing entity whose core mandate is large-scale employment of persons with disability. I therefore urge all ministers, premiers, MECs, mayors, and all leaders across government to actively approach the National Treasury to seek for an exemption that will enable them to procure from supported employment enterprises. Whether you are looking for furniture, office furniture, school furniture, hospital linen, bedding, protective clothing, or institutional textiles, government must use its own procurement muscle to support this entity of our government. NEDLAC continues to demonstrate the strategic importance for social compacting in the democracy such as ours. And during 25-26, they facilitated extensive engagements on labor law reforms. Productivity SA is being repositioned as a strategic delivery of productivity-driven growth, enterprise sustainability, and job retention, particularly for SMMEs. In the current financial year, Productivity SA aims to support more than 1,300 enterprises, capacitate 2,500 workers, developed 350 productivity champions. The CCMA is increasingly becoming a proactive institution focused on conflict prevention. In conclusion, Honorable Chair, honorable members, in a constrained fiscal environment, this budget reflects a deliberate choice of directing resources where they can make greatest impact in jobs. I therefore present to this House the Budget Vote 31 as a statement of national purpose to build a labor market and an economy that works for all our people. I appreciate support of the Deputy Ministers, Portfolio Committee members on employment and labor, my special advisors, DG and entire Dell family executives, and the entire team in my office who spent sleepless nights contributing towards finalization of this budget vote. It is only an abridged budget vote. The speech will be available in the website, both of Parliament and my department. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honorable Maneli.
Honorable House Chairperson, Honorable Minister, Honorable Deputy Ministers, Honorable members of the Portfolio Committee of Employment and Labor, esteemed members of Parliament, colleagues and guests. Today I rise to reflect on the budget allocation for the department and its entities, with a particular focus on the strategic role of the Compensation Fund, the CF, and the Unemployment Insurance Fund, the UIF, in our nation's aspirations to drive state-led reindustrialization through employment integration. This budget vote comes at a critical juncture when South Africa faces skyrocketing unemployment rates that threaten the very fabric of our socio-economic stability. It is therefore imperative that we harness the full potential of these two pivotal funds, not only as social protection mechanisms, but as dynamic drivers of sustainable job creation and economic transformation. This to us as the ANC, it's about the people's needs first, economic transformation first, and no retreat as we advance a better life for all agenda. The CF and the UIF have long served as critical pillars in supporting worker stability and productivity. Their core mandate to provide income support to workers during periods of unemployment or work-related injury is fundamental to social justice and equity. However, as we confront an evolving labor market and the urgent call for economic revival, these funds must be more than safety nets. They must become engines of empowerment, inclusivity, and growth. This is so because the entities have got capacity, particularly the UIF, to create mass employment, as it has proven that it has got capacity through over 158,000 job placements in the form of teaching assistants. Once more, ours is about people's needs first, economic transformation first, and no retreat. Our call as the ANC to strengthen social protection framework is not simply about preserving the status quo, but about ensuring that workers can participate productively in the economy with dignity and security. By supporting worker stability, we cultivate a workforce ready and able to contribute to reindustrialization imperative. This is particularly significant as we aim to revive manufacturing sectors, stimulate industrial productivity, and create decent jobs aligned with South Africa's industrial policies. Honorable House Chair, An essential focus area in this journey is enhancing claims management efficiency within both funds. Currently, service delivery delays undermine labor market confidence and the lives of countless workers depending on timely benefits. By modernizing our ICT infrastructure and streamlining benefit administration, we can significantly reduce this turnaround time and improve user experience. This digital transformation will also allow us to monitor claim trends better, manage risks proactively, and foster transparency and accountability, which are key ingredients for restoring public trust and ensuring fund sustainability. Vocational rehabilitation and return to work programs represent another strategic value to facilitate workforce reintegration. Far too often, workers who suffer workplace injuries or who are displaced by technological and economic shifts find themselves sidelined without necessary support to regain their livelihoods. Investing in tailored rehabilitation services and creating pathways back into employment directly address this challenge. Moreover, such initiatives align with our broader industrial policies by ensuring an adaptive and resilient workforce ready to meet the demands of modern industries. Honorable House Chair, prioritizing labor activation programs that target vulnerable groups such as youth, women, and people living with disabilities reflects our commitment to inclusive growth. These groups have historically borne the brunt of unemployment and marginalization. Dedicated interventions to upskill, activate, and integrate these populations into the workforce are fundamental to correcting structural inequities. The funds, through these targeted programs, will act as catalysts not only for the improved individual livelihoods, but for the broader social cohesion and national economic recovery. Therefore, the reposition process of these funds is a vital step in embedding the employment component within their strategies. This is more than an administrative adjustment. It is a paradigm shift that directly links social protection with active job creation efforts. By aligning their programmed initiatives with national industrial policy, the CF and the UIF become proactive partners in economic development, not merely reactive entities responding to labor market failures. Honorable House Chair, supporting small enterprises, particularly through township supply development, is a primary example of this forward-looking approach. Small and medium enterprises serve as engines of job creation, innovation, and inclusive economic development. The fund's proactive investment in these enterprises ensures that employment opportunities are generated locally, especially in historically underserved areas. This approach is tailored to building sustainable livelihoods and reducing reliance on large urban centers alone, thus facilitating more balanced regional development. Building institutional capacity, closing skills gaps among staff, and advancing fraud prevention and financial oversight are non-negotiable pillars that safeguard the fund's sustainability and public trust. In the face of increasing complexity and demand, the funds must operate with operational excellence and integrity. Where fraud and corruption occurred during COVID, TERS, law enforcement agencies and courts built and strengthened by the ANC-led government since 1994 have been hard at work. The system works and the system is delivering. Robust governance structures ensure that resources are utilized optimally and that the funds can respond dynamically to emerging challenges in the labor market and in the economy. Honorable House Chair, expanding employer engagement and compliance mechanisms supports the formalization of businesses and job creation. Informal employment remains a significant barrier to labor market stability. By encouraging voluntary compliance and formal integration of business into the social protection system, we can broaden the tax base, enhance labor standards, and foster inclusive economic growth. The significance of these funds in driving state-led reindustrialization cannot be overstated. The South African economy requires a coordinated, multifaceted strategy where employment generation is intricately linked with industrial policy. The active integration of these funds in this strategy provides a dual benefit. On the one hand, it ensures social protection, reaches workers efficiently. On the other, it leverages this system to stimulate job creation in priority sectors. This integrated approach effectively positions the funds as catalysts and enablers of industrial revitalization, helping transform economic sectors in ways that create sustainable, decent employment opportunities. The repositioning process is also symbolic of the Department of Employment and Labor's broad commitment to confront the unemployment crisis head-on. By embedding employment components within the operational frameworks of the CF and the UIF, the department asserts a direct role in tackling this challenge. This signals a decisive break from fragmented interventions towards a more strategic, coordinated, and impactful response. In conclusion, Honorable House Chairperson and colleagues, the proposed budget vote 31 provides a robust foundation upon which we can build a more resilient and inclusive labor market. The strategic refocusing of the CF and the UIF as dynamic vehicles to stimulate employment and economic transformation is visionary and necessary. The modernization of the ICT systems, investment in vocational rehabilitation, targeted labor activation program for vulnerable groups, support for small enterprises, and strong governance frameworks collectively represent a comprehensive package designed to tackle unemployment while fostering economic growth. I urge, therefore, this House to support the proposed budget allocations and strategic priorities outlined today. Doing so will enable the department to fortify social protection while simultaneously driving meaningful job creation, which are key to our collective pursuit of a prosperous, inclusive South African economy. Let us seize this opportunity to champion policies that do not only protect, but empower workers, invigorate our industries, and uplift communities across our nation. As the ANC, we support this budget allocation, and I thank you, Honorable House Chair.
Thank you. The Honorable Mbele.
Okay, thank you very much, Honorable House Chair. Okokuqala nje ngicela ukubingelela uNqamalala. Umongameli walenhlangano asikwazi ukuyidispute ke kodwa leyo. Today we stand at a crossroads and I rise not to applaud this budget, but to expose it for what it truly is, a betrayal of unemployed, a betrayal of our youth, and a betrayal of the promise made to the public of South Africa. The Department of Employment, Labour presents us with glossy figures and hollow targets. They parade numbers of registrations, inspections, and transfers. But behind these statistics, lies a grim reality. Unemployment has risen to 32.7% in the first quarter of 2026, with youth unemployment now exceeding 60% for ages 15 to 24. This is not progress. It is a collapse. The president stood before the nation and promised jobs. He announced that 10,000 inspectors would be employed under the labor activation program. That was a lie. The budget before us today confirms it. Not a single cent has been allocated for those inspectors. I'm talking about the sustainable employment. Instead, we are told to accept the stipends, expanded public works, programs, placements, and temporary relief schemes as jobs. These are not jobs. These are crumbs. They are unsustainable, short-term, and designed to pacify the poor while billions are wasted. Let us interrogate the numbers. Out of a total budget of 4.5 billion, 52% is swallowed by the current payments, salaries, and operations. 45% is poured into transfers and subsidies outsourced to entities riddled with government failures. And as a shameful 2.8% is left for capital expenditure, the very investment needed for modernization, digital transformation, and future capabilities. This is not a budget for development. This is a budget for maintenance, for bureaucracy, for sustainable inefficiency. It is a budget that entrenches poverty instead of breaking it. The labor activation program, which should be a lifeline, has become a cesspool of corruption and incompetence. Billions are dispersed to contractors without due diligence, without accountability, and without results. We have demanded a forensic investigation into the fraudulent tenders like the Petucho security. We have demanded transparency. Yet the department remains silent, shielding cronies while community staff. Honorable members, this government has perfected the art of deception. They promise jobs, but deliver stipends. They promise inspectors, but deliver nothing. They promise transformation, but delivers corruption. Even the president himself has proven untrustworthy, making announcements that are not backed by the budget, misleading the parliament and misleading the nation. And let us not forget the COVID relief funds. Companies lined up to benefit from billions in relief, yet they have not accounted for a single sustainable job creation. They have not shown how those funds were used to grow business or protect workers. Meanwhile, informal traders, the backbone of our township and rural economies, the biggest contributors to employment, were left abandoned. They receive no relief, no support, and to this day, they remain in dire straits, still feeling the devastating effects of COVID. It is tragedy that those who carry the economy on their backs are denied growth and development, while politically connected companies pocket relief funds without accountability. We demand transparency. We demand records. We demand proof on how these billions were spent and how they will solve the unemployment crisis. Without accountability, relief becomes theft and promises become lies. And what of the president himself? How does a head of state expend millions of rands hidden under a mattress in foreign currencies? How does he justify hiding such vast sum while preaching austerity to the poor? This is not leadership. It is a deception. It is a corruption at the highest level. And it is a proof that the president cannot be trusted to lead this nation out of poverty and unemployment. We must ask, where is the development? Where is the employment? Where is the accountability? Instead of building sustainable industries, empowering cooperatives, and investing in infrastructure, billions are wasted on programs that collapse after a few months. Instead of prioritizing South Africans, illegal foreign workers are absorbed into exploitation companies while our youth remain excluded. Instead of creating dignity, this government creates dependency. Honorable members, the MKP party rejects this budget. We reject the lies, we reject the corruption, and we reject the betrayal of people. We demand the immediate tabling of a due diligence report on lab contractors, a full forensic investigation into fraudulent tenders and COVID relief beneficiaries, a reallocation of funds away from bloated administration and towards sustainable job creation, real investment in digital transformation infrastructure and youth employment, and above all, accountability from the president and his cabinet for the false promises made to this nation. This budget is not a plan for employment. It is a plan for stagnation. It is not a plan for transformation. It is a plan for deception. And it is not a plan for the people. It is a plan for the few who benefits from the corruption while millions remain unemployed. Honorable members, accountability is not negotiable. The MKP party will not endorse fraud, will not tolerate silence, and we will not allow the hopes of our people to be stolen. This is our solemn pledge. We will fight for real jobs, real development, and real dignity. We will expose every lie, every misuse of money, and every betrayal of unemployment. And to the people of South Africa, if you want to better change, if you want leadership that cares for you, that hears you, that fights for you, then put your votes where they matter. Vote for the MKP party. Vote for the dignity. Vote for the truth. Vote for the real transformation. The time for deception is over. The time for accountability has come. And the time for people to rise. It's now. I thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honorable van der Walt. The
Honorable Chair,
Honorable van der Walt.
yes. Chairperson, can you hear me?
We can, please proceed.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson and the Honorable Members, Minister and Deputy Ministers, the Department of Employment and Labour and its entities budget is not a story of a lack of resources. It's a story of the right money in the wrong places and the wrong priorities on policy. The Unemployment Insurance Fund and Compensation Fund alone generated combined annual surpluses of roughly 44 billion rand in the last financial year. Yet, neither entity managed to obtain a clean audit. Any South African worker or employer will tell you just how difficult it is to claim from the UIF or Compensation Fund, or even to register and comply with the system in the first place. The question then becomes, why should entities with such poor governance records, one of which recently had its commissioner dismissed, be allowed to continue accumulating massive surpluses while service delivery remains deeply inadequate? The answer is simple, Chairperson. They should not. The proof lies in how this money is being used. Both entities continue planning further investments into the failing Daybreak Foods venture, an investment that has already cost each of them roughly 400 million rand, that will likely never be recovered. At the same time, many of the active labour market programs funded through these surpluses continue to produce limited employment outcomes at extremely high cost. In sharp contrast, the institutions that actually keep our labour system functioning are under immense strain. The CCMA remains underfunded and overstretched. Employers and workers alike cannot afford a labour dispute system where cases drag on for months because the institution responsible for resolving disputes lacks sufficient capacity and commissioners cannot keep up with the growing caseloads. NETLAC also plays a critical role in securing cooperation between government, labour and business. But it should be focused on practical labour market reform and social compacting that drives growth and job creation, rather than processes that produce discussion without any implementation. So yes, there is money in the system, but it's not being directed where it can have the greatest impact. But Chairperson, the most important reforms required in this country do not necessarily require more money at all. They require a fundamental rethink and labour market policy. The department's own strategic documents speak about balancing worker protection with labour market flexibility and enterprise competitiveness. Yet, in practice, the policy direction continues moving towards a greater stringency, heavier compliance burdens, and more barriers of hiring. South Africa absolutely needs strong protection for workers, but we also need to recognize the realities facing businesses that are expected to create employment in a stagnant economy. Large corporates may absorb regulatory complexity. Small business cannot. Every additional compliance burden becomes another reason not to hire the next worker. We cannot continue designing labour legislation around the protection of a relatively small number of insiders, while millions of unemployed South Africans remain locked out of the economy entirely. Take the film industry as one example. The sector survives on flexibility, project-based work and short-term contracting. Actors, crews, and technical teams have traditionally operated as independent contractors because that is the nature of that industry. The BCEA already provides protection where working arrangements amount to full-time employment. But instead of recognizing the realities of the sector, the department is moving towards forcing a one-size-fits-all employment model onto an industry that depends on flexibility to remain globally competitive. The cost of that stringency will not be theoretical. It will be paid in productions lost, investment diverted elsewhere, and thousands of jobs disappearing in a sector that South Africa should be growing. The point is simple. We cannot solve unemployment through spending alone while simultaneously advancing policies that make it harder, riskier, and more expensive to employ people. South Africa needs a labour system that fairly balances worker protection with economic growth and job creation. The interests of workers, businesses, and the unemployed must all be considered. Above all, we must design our labour market for growth first, because without growth, there will be no jobs to protect in the first place. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. I now recognize the Honourable Mokwele.
Thank you, Chairperson. Greetings to the Commander-in-Chief, Julius Malema, Commissars, Fighters, and fellow South Africans. Chairperson, the EFF rejects the report on Budget Vote 31, Employment and Labour on the Strategic Plan 2025 to 2030 and Annual Performance Plan 2026 to 2027. Currently, South Africa's unemployment rate stands at about 32%, with youth unemployment approaching alarming levels of, Minister, listen, approaching alarming levels of almost 70%. When we look at these numbers, we are looking at millions of young people sitting at home, losing dignity and being stripped of their future by a system that is refusing to change. The labor market remains deeply divided, intentionally locking out Black and marginalized communities from ever accessing real economic opportunities. Chairperson, the current budget does absolutely nothing to bridge the deep gulf between the haves and the have-nots. The report itself reveals that about 52.1% of this allocation is swallowed up entirely by compensation of employees and internal operational costs. The framework of this department is completely backward. It concentrates its vast wealth and resources on administrative maintenance and red tape instead of focusing on direct employment creation to our people. Chairperson, this budget speaks nothing closer to the reality on the ground, Minister. Stop with those numbers. The reality is that workers are still oppressed. Workers are still earning peanuts. Workers are still without living wages. And Black workers are still not getting the same salaries as their white counterparts for doing exactly same jobs. Chairperson, the UIF and compensation funds are structurally broken, underperforming and riddled with allegation of corruptions. South Africa needs nationalization of key sectors of economy, not tomorrow, but right now. If we nationalize, the economy of this country will expand and we will finally build a foundation that creates sustainable jobs, not jobs opportunities. Sustainable jobs with proper living wages for all workers. The allocation for goods and services, for transfer and subsidies will never address the true need of the labor market or bring about transformation. Currently, Chairperson, the department cannot even resolve the massive fraud corruption facing COVID test funding, where more than 800 million has mysteriously vanished into thin air under the watch of the UIF. The notorious syndicates, you know, Deputy Minister Sibaya, that the notorious syndicates operating within the department from Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal remain untouched even today. The public employment service system is broken, while millions of rands are constantly thrown into outsourced services. This is a unit tasked with a critical job of matching work seekers to available employment, yet it is completely failing our youth. The report before us confirms that the department spends far more on sustaining its own heavy administrative bureaucracy than on delivering its actual mandate to our people. Chairperson, it can never be accepted that the community of Beggarsford in Limpopo is forced to seek basic services from a small, cramped, rented house that is being run as a labor center. It cannot be business as usual, while the people of Klerksdorp in the Northwest are left completely abandoned without a functional labor center. It can never be business as usual, Chair. Whilst the department wasted millions constructing Taung Labor Center only to leave it locked and empty to this very day, while a private sector company is paid month after month just to guard empty walls. It can never be business as usual when this house sat for hours listening to empty promises by Mr. Ramaphosa, claiming he would appoint labor inspectors to protect workers. Yet the report shows that Inspection and Enforcement Services Directorate gets miserable 15.3%. You cannot protect workers on the ground when you staff the inspectorate of resources. We demand that you strengthen, capacitate, and permanently employ inspectors to restore the dignity of our workforce. Passing this budget, you are talking numbers, there's nothing like that, you know. Passing this budget is a direct betrayal of the thousands of unemployed graduates who have been abandoned by this state. Passing this budget is a betrayal of the security guards. Listen, the Petoho, PPE, and Fusion Security Company in the Northwest, who have been forced to guard properties of the state for almost 6 months now. They haven't received any cent of their wages. Chairperson, the EFF calls upon this House to support its insourcing bills to protect workers and crush corruption embedded within government entities. We call upon South Africans, Chairperson, who loves this country, to stand up, go out, register and vote the EFF on the 4th of November 2026 to take back dignity and render
Thank you,
services
Honourable
to
Member.
our people. Amanda!
The Honourable Ngobo.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. It is unfortunate that this budget vote takes place in the wake of the recently released unemployment stats, which revealed a 1.3 increase in the unemployment. Behind these figures are not merely 300,000 jobs lost, but families deprived of income and secondary economies stripped of such needed spending power. This crisis is further compounded by the rising cost of living, particularly the escalating cost of electricity and transport, which continue to place immense pressure on the already struggling households. One of the core mandates of the department is to promote employment and effectively regulate South African labor market. However, as the IFP has consistently maintained, this objective cannot be fully realized without the strict enforcement of the 80-20 employment target, whereby companies may be required to enjoy a minimum of 80% South Africans. Furthermore, then the remaining 20% would be allocated to the non-South Africans, should be limited strictly to individuals possessing critical and scarce skills. The IFP believes that such measures will not only accelerate job creation for South Africans, but will also ensure that the department meaningfully contributes towards achieving the objectives of the medium-term development plan, particularly the goal of reducing unemployment and expanding the economic participation. The fiscal constraints facing government are neither new nor unexpected, and therefore cannot continuously be relied upon as a justification for inefficiency. While the IFP recognizes the difficult financial environment under which the department operates, this reality necessitates a department that is agile, innovative, and responsive to the challenges confronting the people of South Africa. The effective use of limited resources has become more important than ever in ensuring that service delivery and employment objectives are achieved. Furthermore, this issue of illegal immigration is not only a security concern, but also an economic one, particularly in the context of the rising unemployment and growing pressure on public resources. The recent increase in public marches and demonstrations against illegal migration must be taken seriously by the department as they reflect the frustration and anxieties of many South Africans who feel excluded from the economic opportunities. It is therefore concerning that the Inspection and Enforcement Services branch receives the smallest share of the department's budget, despite the critical role it plays in enforcing labor laws, such as compliance and addressing the exploitation of undocumented labor. Strengthening this unit is essential if the department is to effectively regulate the labor market and resource public confidence in the system. The IFP welcomes the mitigation of this concern through filling funded inspector vacancies and the reprioritization of resources, risk-based inspections, and improved operational planning. The Public Employment Service remains an important and necessary intervention by the department, particularly within constrained economic environment characterized by persistent structural unemployment, weak labor absorption, and limited opportunities for work seekers. In such conditions, the state has a critical role to play in connecting unemployed South Africans with available opportunities, supporting skills development, and facilitating pathways into labor market. The IFP, however, supports this budget, and thank you very much.
Thank you. The Honourable Basson.
Honourable House Chairperson, Minister, Deputy Minister. From a political perspective, this report is far too safe. It critiques insufficiency and weak implementation, but avoids confronting the deeper crisis of leadership failure and the real consequences that fails every South African. As PA ondersteun ons hierdie begroting, maar hierdie verslag praat 'n taal van systems, frameworks en compliance. Maar sy bitter min van die mense wat elke dag met die pyn van werkloosheid moet saamleef. Agter elke unemployment statistiek is daar 'n mens, 'n jong graduate wat by die huis sit sonder 'n kans, 'n ma wat moet probeer oorleef met informal werk, 'n township entrepreneur wat sonder toegang tot fondse of markte moet survive, 'n werker wat exploitation aanvaar omdat daar geen alternatief is nie. Jong mense vra nie framework dokumente nie, hulle vra werk, hulle vra opportunity, hulle vra dignity. Ons spandeer miljoene op regulation, governance en administration, maar te min op job creation, labor absorption en economic expansion. Ons meet sukses aan reports wat ingedien word, nie aan jobs wat geskep moet word nie. Suid-Afrikaners kan nie governing models eet nie. Ons kan nie compliance oorleef nie. Elke jong mens kan nie 'n toekoms bou op 'n strategiese plan wat nooit 'n werk word nie. Die ware toets van hierdie begroting is eenvoudig. Kan gewone mense werk kry? Kan families oorleef? Kan mense met dignity leef? Hierdie debat gaan nie oor systems nie. Dit gaan oor mense, ons mense. Ons moet ophou vra of programme bestaan en meer begin vra of dit werk. Minder paperwork, meer realiteit. Van die mense tot die Kaapse vlaktes, tot die strate van Mpumalanga, verdien werk. Verdien wette in labour and employment, wat vir almal werk. Vir te lank was die breinmens te lig in die verlede en te donker in die hede. Die kind van die township, te ongeskool vir bestuurposte. Die huidige blanke kind blameer vir apartheid. Hierdie begroting is net mooi woorde op 'n papier en hierdie realiteit wat ek as 'n member of parliament, vergadering na vergadering, oversight na oversight in hierdie komitee beleef nie. It's time we admit our shortcomings. It's time we take hands with every race in this country to implement and write laws that achieve work for every race in this country. Our Deputy Minister had a meeting with the Chinese factories in Newcastle. Millions of rands for top-notch branch, clothing, textile industry, work stolen from our own communities. To this day, no report, no update, no labour and employment implementers. These factories are still operating, still hiring illegal people, still being ran as sweatshops. Ek kan nie hier sit en sê hierdie debat wat voor my staan is die waarheid nie. We need to do better, and better starts with each and every one of us in this room. I thank you.
The next speaker is Honourable Thring.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. Let me firstly appreciate Honourable Beasley for allowing me to swap places with him. And Honourable House Chair, as the ACDP, we are acutely aware that South Africa's unemployment crisis remains one of the greatest threats to our economy, social stability and national dignity. Millions of South Africans, especially young people, remain excluded from meaningful economic participation. This budget vote must therefore be measured by one question: will it help sustainable jobs and restore hope to our people? While the ACDP recognizes the importance of protecting workers' rights, promoting decent work, and ensuring safe workplaces, Labour policy must also support economic growth, investment, and enterprise development. This 4.5 billion rand budget faces serious resistance from governance failures in the department. Persistent delays and inefficiencies at the UIF and Compensation Fund leave vulnerable workers without timely relief, while weak consequence management and recurring ICT failures continue to frustrate both workers and employers. The Portfolio Committee has rightfully highlighted ongoing weaknesses in administration, audit outcomes, enforcement capacity, and oversight across key entities, including UIF, Compensation Fund, CCMA, and NEDLAC. These failures damage trust and discourage compliance. The ACDP understands that small and medium enterprises remain the greatest potential source of job creation, yet many are suffocated by rising costs, excessive compliance burdens, unreliable infrastructure, and regulatory uncertainty. Simultaneously, there remains a serious mismatch between available skills and market demand and labour market demand. Too many young people leave the education system without the practical and technical skills needed in sectors such as manufacturing, agriculture, infrastructure, technology, and energy. As kingdom builders, the ACDP proposes 3 key priorities. 1, expand vocational training, apprenticeships, artisan development, and labor activation programs aligned to the private sector demand. Secondly, unnecessary regulatory burdens on small businesses must be reduced while maintaining fair labor protections that encourage job creation. Thirdly, urgent reforms are needed at the UIF and Compensation Fund to improve governance, strengthen ICTC systems, eliminate corruption, and ensure efficient service delivery. Employment is more than an income. It restores dignity, strengthens families, and builds safer communities. This budget must translate into job opportunities and economic renewal. I thank you.
The next speaker is Honorable the Deputy Minister of Employment and Labour, Nzinga Tshibalala.
Thank you so much, Honorable House Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee, and the members of the Portfolio Committee, the Honorable Minister of Employment and Labour, Ms. Makosa Zanamith, the Deputy Minister of Employment and Labour, Mr. Jomo Sotova Sibiya, and of course the officials in the department led by the ADG. We greet you all, also the members of the public. Now this year, this debate take place during a very symbolic period in the life of our nation. On the 8th of May, we celebrated the 30 years anniversary of the adoption of the democratic constitution of the Republic of South Africa. In the month of August, we'll be commemorating the 70 years anniversary of the historic march to the Union building by women of our country and women belonging necessarily to the struggle. Of course, we say Watinta Wapasi, Watinta Mpogoto. We are also going to commemorate this year the 50 years since the June 1976 uprising. We say to the ANC Youth League, fight, produce, and learn. And this student uprising, when young people sacrificed their lives demanding a future that will liberate them through the quality education. Now, what's important is that this year we commemorate the Human Month under the theme Bill of Rights at 30, making the human dignity real. The Bill of Rights that was born out of the Freedom Charter that was adopted at 71 years ago, and this year again, it boldly declared that this courage that we had, that the conviction that spoke about there shall be work and security for all. The declaration was not simply a political statement, it was an economic compromise, if not promise, a promise that freedom would ultimately be measured by dignity, equality, and opportunity. These anniversaries compel us not to only celebrate the history, but also to confront honestly the present reality of our country. From the earliest days of the democratic state, the African National Congress understood the employment is not just an economic matter, but it is a social justice and is imperative. That is a government that continues to work. It is within this context that this budget advances that mission through the strategic pillars, and this was brought by the African National Congress. The protection of workers through enforcement and compliance, the creation of inclusive employment opportunities, the building a productive economy capable of competing globally. That is the system that continues to work. Honorable Chairperson, we have an entity called the Supported Employment Enterprises that stands as one of the most powerful instruments of economic inclusion. This portfolio is mandated to provide meaningful employment for persons with disabilities that reflects the constitutional values of equality and human dignity. We must also acknowledge its challenges that it finds itself, primarily because it's unable to attract the necessary jobs that needs to have for it to continue the work that it does. In the 13 factories that it has throughout the country, it is seen that the employment has went down primarily because of the issue of not attracting the necessary jobs. That's why in the SONA debate on SONA this year, our president has urged all the departments to make sure that it does procure from this entity to ensure that we reach ultimately the 7% of employment of persons with disability come 2030. So we declare today, as well as the department, that we we need the departments to procure from this entity. While we at it as well, we want to also report here that we have met with the Premier from Mpumalanga that also has expressed in all the factories that we have in the country, Mpumalanga doesn't have, and we have made sure that there is a process that we're involving ourselves with the Premier and his government should have the factory this year. Now, we should, in all the department, in all the challenges that the CE has, the issues of its legality, we're saying we're going to be clarifying that through our legislation framework that we're going to do to strengthen the oversight, accountability, and make sure the system has its credibility. We have an entity called Productivity SA that is also recognized as Africa Kaizen Center of Excellence, positions South Africa as a continental leader in the productive improvement. However, honorable members, expanding the impact requires the sustained funding, especially skills and stronger partnerships within municipalities, industry, and international institutions. And I want to say to the members that came and debated, and you were speaking about the issue of TERS funding, the COVID-19, the department through its SIU, it's charging people. People are getting arrested. So I don't know which country we're living in and what you are not observing. I mean, in labor centers, there's been arrests that are happening, and that's a reality. The wheel and the tide is turning, and this is a government and state that continues to work. The inspection services, we also want to commend it under our Deputy Minister Sibia. That is always on the ground. Even tomorrow, they're going to be doing inspections. And when you say there's an honorable member that said the issue of the Chinese from PA companies that were arrested, you must start by commending the work of the department led by that deputy minister. So an honest person when you debate. And she says that there's no report to date. I can tell you that Honorable Simbia, with its inspectorate, they met with the Chinese embassy. Almost 31 companies today, they are going to cooperate. They are working with the IES inspectorate to make sure there's issues of labor that is recognized, the issues of minimum wage, also the issues of making sure that they register them under the UIF and CF. So you must follow properly. Don't debate for the sake of debating. Must bring facts here. Now, we want to recognize their work, and the president announced that we're going to have 10,000 this year in Isona in terms of the inspectorate. The process is also unfolding, and we want to commend the department under SDDG to continue with the work. The minister has spoken about the project 20,000. We want to also say to you, we've got an entity called CCMA that is produced and that has been very excellent, and none of the members are speaking about that has ensured labor rights of people that is happening today. And this year they're celebrating their 30 years of excellence, and that are resolving millions of labor disputes, fairly promoting labor peace and accessible to justice since 1994. Now the EFF member makes noise. However, this is the CCMA and a department that assists even your labor desk whenever there's issues. Now let me respond to you. When you speak about Lexdor, right now, there are trucks that are going around that are servicing persons of Trestop. There is many centers that are there. So the only thing you know is corrupt activities. You're not telling us about your president that is convicted and all of that. You are mumbling and trying to be relevant.
On the point
and
of
speaking
order,
about
Chair.
our
On the
president
point of
here.
order,
Our
Chair.
president did not steal the money of the
Deputy
public.
Minister, will you
Order,
please
Chair.
take your seat?
Calling order, I'm ready.
Chair,
Honorable Deputy Minister, will you please take your seat?
sit down, Deputy Minister.
Honorable member, honorable, what is your point of order?
The Deputy Minister must not come here and speak about the Commander-in-Chief.
Honorable member, can you
Not
please raise a
about
point of
what
order?
she's saying. Her president have found with money
Honorable member,
almost billions of pouches.
honorable member, please take your seat.
We need
When the members of both sides of the house, please calm down.
say,
Order.
record. Just for
Honorable Minister,
it's on appeal. That sentence is on
Honorable
appeal.
Minister and
You must
Honorable
not
Member
talk
of
about
the
it,
EFF.
But your president is busy.
Honorable Member of the EFF. Honorable members. Honorable Minister.
He's a criminal.
Please switch off the microphones. I will switch off the microphones because the members, Honorable Minister, I don't think that is good behavior. Honorable Member of the EFF, do you want to leave the House? Can you please, there was no point of order. No. Honorable Member, according to the rules,
Conditionally.
it doesn't help to ask, will you please stand up and apologize to the House for your unruly behavior? There was no point of order. I'm not going to allow any more points of order on the same thing. I've made a rule,
Chair-
an apology will be accepted.
But for the purpose of me being here and listening to the speakers that are not being truthful, I will apologize.
Thank
I
you.
want to be here and listen to the speakers that are not truthful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Honorable Deputy, do you have point of order on the same issue? If it's on the same issue, that's not a point of order.
No, Speaker. No, Chairperson.
Point of order,
She
please.
must withdraw saying my president is a criminal. She must withdraw it. Because Cyril
I will-
Ramaphosa is a criminal.
Honorable Member.
Not my CIC is a criminal. She must withdraw it first.
I will listen to the Hansard and make a ruling on the next sitting. Thank you, Honorable Minister. Please continue.
Thank you so much, House Speaker. I was never going to withdraw. I didn't mention the name of a member of the House, so they must get it clear, know the rules of the House, they must read. Honorable members, as I'm about to also wrap up, it is important for all of us to
On a point of
remember.
order, Chair, sorry.
Honorable Deputy Minister, please take your chair. Honorable,
Thank you very much. Yes, I agree that the Deputy Minister did not mention the name, but she did mention the president of the EFF, and we only have
Honorable
one
Member,
president of the
I already ruled on that. There's already a rule. There's no further points of order on that same issue. Thank you.
Thank you so much for extending my stay here with frivolous point of orders. Let me continue. Honorable members, all of us must remember in our open quote, flower of peace cannot be sustained by poverty and by want. Our democracy continues to wrestle with the triple challenges of poverty, unemployment, and inequality. The structural challenges are now compounded by this rising crime, economic uncertainty, and persistent joblessness that weighs heavily on our communities across the country. We must acknowledge the frustration of fellow South Africans that remain, particularly young people, that graduates who persist qualifications and ambitions and hope, yet find themselves languishing without employment opportunities. Their frustration is real, it's legitimate, it's understandable. As leaders entrusted with public responsibility, we must respond not with divisiveness of not defending, but with also all the humanity and honestly and decisive action, and only by pulling together as South Africans, including political parties, to make sure we deal with the issue of unemployment. I want to quote the revolutionary Karl Marx that once said an open quote, the point is not only to understand the suffering of people, but to change the material conditions that produce it, a close quote. Our President Nelson Mandela in 1999, during the May Day rally in Kimberley, when he said an open quote, no longer do we have a government that sees farm workers as deserving of the same rights as others. And this system and the ANC government is the one that has brought the rights. President Mandela says no longer will the use of child labor be allowed. This is the department that ensures that it has protected those rights, a system that that continues to work under the ANC. Now, all of us as the Department of Employment and Labor, we are honestly confronting these challenges, united in purpose and inspired by the vision of the Freedom Charter that includes that and South Africans that belong to all who live in it, black and white. Let us ensure that we hold together and not also listen to these ones that had nothing to offer but telling us about their president, vote for this MK party. That had nothing to offer. The only thing it remains that party that doesn't have democracy, a party of
Honourable
one
Deputy
man show,
Minister, your time
only
is
knows
expired.
change leadership every day, and we can't.
Honourable Deputy Minister, your time has expired.
It does not. I've got 9 seconds. It's here. I'm watching the clock.
People
My
are
time
voting
has
the
not
MK
expired.
party on the 4th
No,
of
no,
November.
Your time has expired.
No, but the clock is not stopping. We want to thank you and we
Honourable Deputy Minister.
Vote.
Just wait. Honourable members. Honourable members, can you please quiet down? Honourable members, can you please quiet down? I want to remind all members, including the Minister and the Deputy Minister, that we are all here to adhere to the rules of this House. And I will therefore also want to remind you that it's against the rules to take a photo or any video during the plenary. The next speaker is Honourable Beasley.
House Chair, if the Minister of No Labour and No Employment had any honour, she would have resigned long time ago. But it's clear that she does not. As such, Action SA has repeatedly called on the President to fire the Minister. A year ago, we wrote to the President formally requesting her removal. Yesterday, we wrote again. The message has not changed. The Minister remains in office and South Africans continue to shed hundreds and thousands of jobs. Action SA makes this call for the Minister to be fired on behalf of the 345,000 people who lost their jobs in the first quarter of this year, on behalf of the 30,000 South Africans who lost their job every week, and the 6,000 who lose their jobs every single day. Action SA makes this call for the Minister to be fired on behalf of the 12 million South Africans who are either unemployed or so discouraged that they have given up looking for work altogether. Action SA makes this call for the Minister to be fired on behalf of the 60% of young people aged between 15 and 24 who are unemployed. Action SA makes this call for the Minister to be fired on behalf of the 11% of graduates who cannot find employment in the country they were educated to serve. With the expanded unemployment rate now at a record 43.7%, it is clear that the Minister, her deputies and the GNU as a whole have no coherent plan to address this crisis. Unemployment is not merely an economic statistic, it is a human tragedy. Behind these numbers are 12 million individuals whose dreams, agencies, hope, and often sense of purpose have been eroded. The consequences are severe and far-reaching, what often has been described as psychological murder. Yet for the Minister, her deputies and the GNU cabinet, there appears to be no consequences at all. They continue to earn generous salaries, receive luxurious perks and live a life of comfort, while 12 million South Africans are left in a state of despair. Chairperson, behind this bloodbath in the labour market, there are also grave concerns with the department itself. Chief among them is the rampant corruption and mismanagement within the Compensation Fund and the UIF Fund. These funds exist to protect and support working South Africans at their most vulnerable moments. Instead, they've been hollowed out and treated as slush funds for fraud, maladministration, and capture. In the process, the dignity of workers being stripped away by those entrusted to safeguard it. House Chair, the purpose of this vote is to reduce unemployment, poverty, and inequality by advancing the objectives of decent work for all through employment creation and enterprise development, the setting and enforcement of labour standards, the protection of workers' rights, the facilitation of equal opportunities and social dialogue, and the provision of social protection. However, based on past performance and the continued inability of the current leadership of this department and the GNU to address the job crisis, it is clear that these objectives will not be achieved. Instead, unemployment, poverty, and inequality will continue to rise. Chairperson, on behalf of the 12 million South Africans who are being economically and psychologically murdered every day, Action SA rejects this budget. And once again, we make a call for the Minister of No Labour and No Employment to be fired. I thank you.
Are there any speaker for the UDM? Any speaker for the RISE? Then the next speaker is Honorable Shabu Webster on the virtual platform.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. I've been listening to the political back and forth that's been taking place in defense of party leaders in this House today. And I really just want us as the House to perhaps for a moment think about the South African that's sitting at home, that's actually watching these proceedings, that is unemployed, that is discouraged, that's wondering whether there's anyone in this chamber that actually truly understands the weight of what they're carrying. Because while we as political parties can sit here and trade insults, there's 12 million South Africans that remain without work or have given up hope of finding work altogether. So today we debate Vote 31 against the backdrop of a deepening unemployment crisis that has become normalized in South Africa. The latest quarterly labor force survey paints a devastating picture. South Africa's expanded unemployment rate now stands at 43.7%. And that means that we have 12 million South Africans that are without work, that are locked out of opportunity, a generation that's locked out of opportunity. And this has happened under the GNU. And under this GNU, South Africans are now seeing fewer jobs than under previous administration. And that points to a lack of policy cohesion, a lack of urgency, and a lack of administrative capability. This Department of Employment and Labour continues to spend billions on intervention and support programs, while the labour market actually continues to deteriorate. Unemployment is no longer treated as a national emergency in this country. It has become normalized. And having said this, there's the issue of unemployment and of getting work and access to work. But economic justice is not only about access to work, it's also about fairness, dignity, and equality once South Africans are in the workplace itself. And that's why, as BOSA, we're welcoming the growing national support for our Fair Pay Bill, with final 10 days of the public participation now underway. We have nearly 3,000 submissions that we've received in support of the bill over the past 20 days. And that includes backing from civil society, from organizations in the labor sector, labor formation, such as COSATU and MISA. The bill introduces three very simple but very transformative reforms. And that's the ending of salary history discrimination, the requiring of salary transparency in job advertisements, and strengthening equal pay for equal work. So it is about fairness, dignity, and building a labor market that's based on merit rather than secrecy and exploitation. We therefore urge members of this portfolio committee to consider this bill favorably. And I want to directly challenge the Democratic Alliance, and specifically Honorable Michael Bagram, to review their stance on this bill. And I want to ask them, why would any party oppose pay transparency? Why would anyone defend vague and opaque hiring practices that continue to reproduce?
Member, your time has expired.
Thank you.
Is there a speaker for the ATM?
I am here, Chair. Can I proceed?
Yes, please.
Minister, the crisis of unemployment in our country is a ticking time bomb. With this crisis, the department must be intentional about fighting unemployment. The reality is that there are jobs in South Africa. However, the private sector prefers to employ foreign nationals in order to underpay and exploit them. The fact that there are sectors in our country in which the majority of the workforce is foreigners is an indictment in this department, because it is the failure of this department that allows capital to exploit the foreign workers and sideline South Africans and thus create conflict in the communities. And Minister, people must not be misled. The issue of foreign workers being employed ahead of South Africans will need more than labor inspectors. We've done inspections before and we know this. The competency to deal with undocumented foreign workers lies with immigration officers. You can employ over the 10,000 labor inspectors, but if the immigration officers remain only 832 in our country, the problem will not be solved. You need to engage the Minister of Home Affairs. So an increase in labor inspectors is also coupled with an increase in immigration officers. If your commitment to deal with the capital that is exploiting foreign workers is genuine. Equally, the fines for companies employing foreign workers without the valid documentation is not a deterrent. Hence, companies continue employing illegal foreigners as they know that the fine is just a slap on the wrist. The problem with this department is the weak enforcement of laws and the inability of the department to aggressively advance the interest of South Africans. The department must also drive policy changes in our economy to be more manufacturing driven in order to create jobs. The protection of some sectors of the economy for citizens and the local production of basic goods will definitely create jobs. The department must also drive the government spending to be more on SMMEs in order to create jobs and reduce the unemployment levels in our country. We expect the department to drive such economic policy changes that are pro-job creation, ensuring the economy is transformed for the benefit of the people. Lastly, given the failures of this department, we call upon all South Africans who want jobs and a transformed economy to register and vote for the ATM, an organization that has proven it cares for South Africans and has got a plan to improve their lives. Want to invite all South Africans this weekend at Buffalo City Municipality Stadium, Kokompo, where a manifesto to improve the lives of South Africans will be tabled. We want to commit to you South Africans that ATM has always been by your side. Thank you.
Honorable member, the honorable member of the ANC on the right-hand side. I don't know your name, but please, if you want to speak, ask the party to put you on the speakers list. The next speaker is the Deputy Minister, Minister Hendricks.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, House Chair. Al-Jamaa supports this budget and the hard work of the department to reduce unemployment has not gone unnoticed. Al-Jamaa met the leadership of the African, Asian and Arab diaspora over the past 3 months. These diasporas have no quarrels to follow the laws of South Africa on immigration and to apply for refugee status, residency and citizenship and accept the outcome of the applications and seek elsewhere for safety and greener pastures. They understand that South Africans feel that they are taking their jobs. Every diaspora leader I met were prepared to create jobs, especially those in business at spaza shop level, in shopping malls, in the corporate world and in manufacturing industries. So they are computing how many jobs they already have created for local South Africans and they want to double it as a start. They are prepared to work with government to create 500,000 jobs and agree on the timetable. Al-Jamaa supports this budget and asks that the minister work with his parliamentary constituency to take up the offer of the diasporas. In the meantime, the research is in place and the state of readiness is on the radar that will double the jobs. Honorable Chair, Tanzania led the Liberation Committee and African countries got their freedom one by one. They only closed down the secretariat when South Africa got its freedom in 1994. What is not well known is that Tanzania quietly paid the annual fees of South African liberation formations. Asking South Africa to leave is a setback to the African intercontinental trade. This trade will grow South Africa's GDP to over 10% and create millions of jobs. This is now in danger of being lost. The African international continental trade will also make South Africa a more prosperous country. We're looking at a 5 trillion GDP in Africa. It is 7 years now, and on the radar is 7 years of prosperity. Let me incentivize political parties of the 7th Parliament and those knocking on the doors. You can see the votes of the diaspora. South African citizens have, many people in the diaspora have got South African citizenships. You are shooting yourself in the foot by trying to marginalize them. Al-Jamaa supports this budget. Thank you very much.
The next speaker is Honorable Wessels on the virtual platform.
Dankie agbare huisvoorsitter. Huisvoorsitter, die minister het begin deur om te verwys na die krisis wat werkloosheid is en sy is heeltemal reg. Terwyl dit 'n krisis is en niemand dit kan ontken, nie aangesien amper helfte van ons bevolking werkloos is en baie nie meer eers werk soek nie, want hulle is so moedeloos gesoek na werk, is dit 'n krisis. Maar die departement is in 'n paradoksale dilemma. En hoekom ek so sê, is omdat die departement aan die een kant 'n werkskepingsmandaat het en aan die ander kant 'n arbeidsmandaat het wat juis eintlik baie keer daartoe lei dat werksgeleenthede eintlik belemmer word en die privaat sektor nie kan werk skep nie weens oorregulering en sekere wetgewing en beleid wat bestaan en wat onder die departement val. Hier moet 'n balans wees, agbare huisvoorsitter. Many of us in this house will disagree about labor legislation and regulations being barriers to job creation. But it serves no purpose for the department to talk about workers' rights whilst this department entities are dysfunctional. Entities that are in real terms supposed to serve and assist workers. The compensation fund is one of these. Whilst this fund yields a surplus of billions, it is plagued by dismal operational performance. The fund's failures leave injured workers waiting for compensation for years. This is a failure of workers' rights. The Unemployment Insurance Fund is another of these failed entities. This fund is supposed to be a safety net for the unemployed, but it is mismanaged and much needed payouts are delayed. Women who are dependent on the UIF during unpaid maternity leave are failed when these claims take more than 4 months to process and pay out. Allowing these backlogs and failures to process claims are failing the department's mandate of protecting human dignity and social security. Honourable House Chairperson, whilst the department's actions, as alluded to by the Deputy Minister in terms of consequences for those who transgressed with the TERS funding, are welcomed, the problem of a lack of consequence management and accountability of these external entities remain dim. 45% of this budget is transferred to these entities. So there must be better internal controls, and it cannot be that the leadership of these entities year in and year out fail, and it cannot be that there is a lack of accountability and that this just continues year in and year out. I thank you, House Chairperson.
The next speaker, is there a speaker for the NCC? A speaker for the UAT, Honorable Malachli. The next speaker for the PAC. A speaker for Good. The next speaker is Honorable Bagram.
House Chair, can the clock continue as he walks?
Madam Chair, the Department of Employment and Labour has two functions only. They're well described by the changed name. It has not, however, done a good job in meeting either of them. Firstly, the emphasis is on employment. As we know, since the name change occurred, the creation of employment has fallen off a cliff. The department has failed in its mission. Where it should be implementing pro-growth employment strategies, it is falling short. Some GNU green shoots are emerging, but we must go further and faster. Setting small businesses free from the stringent wage deals agreed by big business and big unions at the Bargaining Council is key to the growth of our economy. There's no reason why this exemption should be limited to 2 years. If, as the National Development Plan provides, SMEs are supposed to provide 90% of the new jobs by 2030. When it comes to labor, the department is supposed to have some sort of oversight and ensure employed labor in South Africa is protected in accordance with the rights given to our labor force under both our constitution and the various labor statutes, as it should do. When it comes to protecting the rights and interests of South African workers, the department has fallen well short. Our labor force depends on the UIF to step in when times are difficult. Injured workers are supposed to be compensated by the compensation fund. Instead, they must wait in queues or face unreliable online systems only to be deprived of their rightful compensation. This is not a resources issue. Both entities have huge surpluses sitting at the PIC. It's a government issue. No wonder then that the former UIF commissioner who was dismissed in February without a word in public from the minister. The minister is always keen to introduce more and more requirements on employers, making hiring more expensive and disrupting long-standing industries like the film production sector with misguided regulations. When it comes to the Labour Inspectorate, her department cannot ensure that South African workers are being properly treated. Bearing in mind that the department has missed the mark at two and only two functions it has, we need to look at the budget. We know, and the public knows, that budgeting should be a simple thought process. Firstly, we need to know what the department requires and whether it can deliver on these requirements. And secondly, what sort of resources are we able to fund the budget? But when a department has lost the thread on both its functions, this becomes a difficult process indeed. We're all aware that there are certain entities within the failing department which, despite all odds, still continue to deliver. We are aware that the CCMA and NEDLAC are both world-class and both are suffering because of budget cuts. My heart goes out to the directors of both functional entities who are watching their world-class institutions being sacrificed at the altar of incompetence, experience, and all the other entities within the department. Likewise, I sympathize, unlike others present in this House, with the millions who are waiting in job queues and deserve an apology from the minister insistent on archaic labor regulations which lead to job destruction at their expense. The second apology ought to be made by the entities within the department who have no understanding of service delivery at all. The Democratic Alliance calls for a complete overhaul and a restructure of these failing entities and for the enhancement of the budget for those that are actually delivering. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Honorable members, earlier on, a point of order was raised by Honorable Mokwela alleging that the Honorable Deputy Minister had referred to the President of the EFF as a criminal. The Honorable Minister only made reference to the President who has been convicted. I want to caution all members to stick to the subject matter of this budget vote. The next member or the next speaker is Honorable Notsela. Honorable Deputy Minister, please don't start. Honorable Notsela, please continue. Please continue. You can please speak.
I thought you were saying, I thought there is. Thank you, Honorable Chair, Honorable House Chairperson, Honorable Minister, Honorable Deputy Ministers, Honorable Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee, and Honorable members, esteemed members of Parliament, colleagues and guests. Today I rise in support of the Budget 31 on behalf of the African National Congress, a budget vote that epitomizes our collective commitment as ANC to confront and overcome the scourge of unemployment that continues to afflict our beloved country. This budget, Honorable Van der Walt, is not merely an allocation of resources, but a decisive strategic intervention on our mission to reshape the labor market, empower workers, and promote inclusive economic growth. At the heart of this effort lie two pivotal institutions: the Commission for Conciliation, Mediation, and Arbitration, the CCMA, and the National Economic Development and Labor Council, NEDLAC. These entities are cornerstones in the ANC's vision for a stable and just labor market, a vision informed by the values of our freedom struggle and the practical needs of economic transformation. The Honorable House Chair, the CCMA significance cannot be overstated. It serves as the frontline labor relations, providing an impartial and accessible forum for dispute resolution between employers and employees. Its role extends beyond dispute resolution. It fosters industrial peace, a prerequisite for economic productivity and job retention. The allocation in this budget aimed at enhancing CCMA's digital transformation is a milestone, Honorable Begra. By leveraging modern technology, the CCMA will increase its efficiency, reduce the time taken to resolve labor disputes, and extend accessibility to all workers, especially those in vulnerable and underserviced communities. Digitalization paves the way for a responsive, transparent, and user-friendly service that is critical to maintaining labor market stability in an era defined by rapid economic and technological change. It is also important, Honorable Chair, that we need also to situate the South African conditions in a proper context, particularly when we talk about unemployment. We need to take into account, honorable members, that South Africa is not an island on its own. It exists within a global environment. The tariff wars, the situation in the Middle East, you need to factor all those. Notwithstanding that, you need to factor also the more than 350 years of liberation struggle that we have to contend with, hence the backlogs and the current unemployment. Honorable House Chair, the CCMA also plays a proactive role in shaping labor landscape through collective bargaining and social justice initiatives. These interventions are essential in addressing inequality and vulnerability in our workplaces, ensuring that the labor market becomes a tool for social transformation aligned with our policy imperative as the African National Congress, aimed towards fairness and dignity for all workers as reflected in our January 8th statement. Complementing this is the indispensable role of NEDLAC, the tripartite platform where government, labor, business, and community converge to negotiate and build consensus on socio-economic policies. NEDLAC embodies the spirit of social partnership a mechanism through which diverse interests find common ground and shared purpose. This is particularly important in our country where historical divisions, which I've spoken about earlier on, and socio-economic disparities necessitate dialogue that is both inclusive and robust. As we have stated in our January 8 statement presented by our President, Comrade Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa, and it reads, the ANC committed to an inclusive and people-led national dialogue that reflects the hopes, frustrations, and aspirations of South African people. The national dialogue should produce a widely inclusive social compact with broad support to guide the country forward and inform future national development plan. I close. Honorable House Chair, the budget provides for strengthening NEDLAC's capacity to fulfill this mandate effectively. Targeted capacity building for social partners ensures that all voices, especially of labor and community formations that are historically marginalized, are heard and meaningfully participate in policy discourse. NEDLAC's role in integrating climate change and just transition policies within its dialogue framework in collaboration with the Presidential Climate Commission is a forward-looking alignment with global imperatives that safeguard sustainable development and decent work. Effective governance and budget oversight at NEDLAC guarantees that this inclusive dialogue translates not only into discussion, but into actionable socio-economic policies that drive growth, create jobs, and reduce poverty in line with our manifesto of 2024. Where in fact we put forward in terms of priority number 2, that is build our industries for an inclusive economy by implementing a cross-cutting industrial strategy that drives growth and creates opportunities for youth and other unemployed persons. NEDLAC's work promotes social cohesion by building trust amongst partners and mitigating labor market conflicts before they escalate, fostering a stable environment conducive to investment and employment. Honorable House Chair, Department of Employment and Labor, supported by this budget, is poised to launch a direct and multidimensional fight against the skyrocketing unemployment crisis that afflict our people. This crisis demands interventions that are strategic, institutionally supported, and socially inclusive. In strengthening the CCMA, we are fortifying labor market stability by ensuring that workplace disputes are resolved efficiently, allowing businesses to operate uninterrupted, workers to secure their livelihoods. Empowering NEDLAC, we need to deepen social dialogue that informs policy imperative, that is reflective of shared national interests, fostering consensus that balances economic growth with worker protections. Addressing legacy institutional challenges within these bodies remain critical. We must modernize, professionalize, and streamline processes that meet the demands of a dynamic and often volatile labor market. This budget is therefore a critical enabler of transformation within these institutions, ensuring that they better serve the workers, employers, and the communities they represent. Honorable House Chair, unemployment in South Africa is not merely a statistic. It is a human tragedy and an economic barrier. It undermines social cohesion and threatens the gains of our democratic order. Our commitment through this budget is to empower institutions that can deliver tangible results, such as reduction in labor market conflicts, creation of sustainable jobs, improved worker protection, and inclusive social partnership. It is an ANC policy imperative to build an economy that works for all South Africans by fostering a labor market that is fair, inclusive, and conducive to growth, and conducive to inclusive growth. I therefore urge this Assembly to support the proposed budget as an investment in the country's future, in the dignity of work, and in the social dialogue mechanisms that underpin a stable and prosperous South Africa. Together through CCMA and NEDLAC, through firm government leadership and collaborative partnership, that the Honorable Minister has spoken above, ably supported by both Deputy Minister and Honorable Chairperson of the committee. We shall overcome the challenge of unemployment and build a society reflective of our shared aspiration for freedom, justice, and economic emancipation. Honorable Chair, just in conclusion, there is just a free reference with regard to the work that has been done to deal with corruption. It's just freely available information. If you can just Google it, honorable members. You go, it says high profile and recent cases. In Mpumalanga, the ghost worker scheme, 3 suspects were arrested for allegedly claiming 27 million from UIF using 700 fictitious employees. I go further, KZN syndicate. On December 2025, the SIU alongside police
Honorable Noseda, your time has expired.
It's freely available. You don't have to. It's very available.
The last speaker is the Honorable Minister of Employment and Labour. Minister.
Honorable Mbele from the MK. Please, we are busy cleaning the mess that your president, Mr. Gedleyihlekisa Zuma, did in the country.
Chair.
For 10 years now, we are busy fixing Transnet Eskom.
Honorable Minister.
Busy fighting
Honorable Minister,
the corruption
please
that
take
we
the
made
chair.
so institutional in our country.
Honorable Minister, will you
The
please take
minister
the
is
chair of
out
these
of
points of order?
President Jacob Zuma is not with us in this house.
Honorable
Therefore,
member,
she
please.
must not come here and name his name on whatever they were doing now.
Honorable Minister,
So
Honorable
she
member.
must stay out on igama lika President Zuma. That is out of order, Chairperson.
Order. Can all the members please? Honorable members, if you continue like this, I will put off all the microphones. We cannot continue like this. Every one of you who wants to shout to another person, can you please leave the chamber and take your fight outside? If you want to raise a point of order based on the procedures and or the content of the debate, then you can raise your point of order. I've already made a rule on the referral to the EFF's president. I'm not going to take any more points of order. Honorable Minister, please continue.
And you come here and shout the loudest about corruption you cannot prove. Yet your party is born out of the most corrupt individual in the country. Honorable
Minister, will you please take your seat? There's a point of order. Honorable member, can you please raise your point of order?
Thank you very much, House Chair. I would like the minister to withdraw the reference to former President Zuma in terms of what she is alleging, because President Zuma is not in this house. There's no need for her to name someone who is not in this house. He's named by name.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Because of the shouting, I couldn't hear clearly what she said. I will refer to the Hansard and make a ruling. Thank you, Minister. Will you continue?
Honorable Mukwili, you disappoint me. You are the member of the Portfolio Committee. And we as the ministry and the department, we report to the Portfolio Committee all the time. And you know that there is a system called ESSA, which is the largest job seeker database or system in the country. Please go report to your CIC, who said if the Department of Employment was effective, it would have that system. The system
On a
is
point
there.
of order, Chair. On a point of order, Chair.
Honorable Mokwela, what is your point of order?
My surname is not Mukwela, it's Mukwili.
Mokweli?
Mukwili, yes. I'm raising a concern again, Chair. You ruled on it, but it resurfaced again. The only CIC, the minister is saying I must go and report to the CIC. She must report to the unemployed youth that are sitting there.
Honorable Mokweli?
unemployed. She must leave our CIC.
Honorable Mokweli?
The CIC is not in this house. The CIC is not in this house, with due respect, Honorable Chair. He's not in this house. The minister must respond to the issues that affects people of South Africa. I
Honorable
don't have to
Mokweli,
report
you are now making a speech.
day.
That is
It's the
not the
work
point of order anymore.
not
Can
on
we?
your work.
Honorable Mokweli, please take your seat. Honorable Minister, please continue.
So the honorable members who are here deployed by different organizations must also empower their organizations. That there is a system in South Africa which has more
not
than
working.
8
You know
million
it's not
people who are in the database with almost 4 million.
Mokweli, Honorable Mokweli. Honorable Mokweli, Honorable Minister, please take your seat. Honorable Mokweli, I am naming you. Please respect the order of this House. Honorable Minister, please continue.
And I call upon all the employers to consult that system. It's got details of CVs of South Africans, including the young people who are close to 4 million, with a detail that says, what skill do you have? Where do you stay? So the issue of pressing a button and going and get a chef is in that system. I want to also say to the employers, they must stop the mischief of sidelining young South Africans and South Africans in general, because they want to use the foreign nationals for cheap labor. They want to also exploit them and avoid compliance with the laws of this country. We are coming for you because already we are dealing with those employers who are employing illegal workers. We process them, but you are coming even for those who are employing those who are legal in South Africa, but not having a scarce skill that we must be importing as the country. That's why we have the NLMP that we have passed. We are bringing to Parliament the Employment Service Amendment Bill that will give the minister powers to ensure that quotas and sectors are set aside only for South Africans in terms of the low skills. And I'm expecting the EFF members, when we come to Parliament with that ESA bill, that they will support it. I want to also say to the members who are here, they must go and read the speech, because unfortunately I only presented the abridged speech. We are starting to implement our mandate, our role as public employment programs coordinator. Hence, we are saying in the speech, there is a framework that we conducted a study working with all the serious institutions of this country, including Nelson Mandela University. That study is saying there's 106 public employment programs that are causing duplication, fragmentation, and we are bringing a framework so that we can coordinate the work that is done by public employment programs. That is doing our work as the Department of Employment and Labor. Honorable Bagraim, I get sometimes to be worried because you've got a law. You are a law student. And as such, you should understand that employment mandate that was given to the Department of Employment and Labor does not necessarily mean it must employ people. And you mischievously also admit that there's stability, there are green shoots, and you choose to claim them to be GNU green shoots. So you know that the economy is stabilizing. Yes, we agree. We have not yet realized the number of absorption of those who are the labor force by the labor market as we would have loved. That's why we are bringing here programs to intervene. That's why we have budgeted 36.6 billion rand for the labor activation program. Honorable Mkweli, there are inspectors. There is budget. I told you it's 5 billion rand that we've budgeted, and 10,000 have been already recruited and successfully being uploaded into the system. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Where is the recruiting? Where is the recruiting? Where did?
Honorable members, that concludes the debate and the business of this mini plenary session. The mini plenary will now rise.
Recording
Viva
stopped.
Ramaphosa, viva